One day, Jake decided that he wanted to build a rainbow. He went downstairs and announced his plan to his parents. His mom clapped. His dad smiled.
What a great idea!
His dad gave him a high five and asked,
How are you going to get started?
Jake thought for a moment. He had never built a rainbow before. He knew that they were big, had a lot of colors, and, most of all, were beautiful. He decided that he needed some help. He went outside, grabbed his wagon, and started walking through his town to ask some of his friends for help. The first place he came to was the candy store. Maybe Mr. Sugarman will help me build the rainbow, Jake thought. He went inside and saw Mr. Sugarman standing behind the counter.
Hello, Jake.
Mr. Sugarman said, smiling broadly.
How can I help you today?
I'm building a rainbow, Jake said happily. Can you help me?
Oh, a rainbow, eh? I'm afraid I can't today. We're expecting a colossal crate of caramel candies, and I can't leave the store. I'm sorry.
Jake was sad and frowned a big frown. Mr. Sugarman felt bad.
Jake, don't be sad. Take a jar full of your favorite red candy. I know how much you love it,
Mr. Sugarman said, handing over a jar full of the delicious candy. Jake nodded, took the candy, and put it in his wagon. He said thank you, waved goodbye, and went to try to find someone else to help. Next, he came to a fruit stand. Mrs. Applegate waved at him and said,
Good morning, Jake. What are you up to today?
Jake waved and said, Hello, Mrs. Applegate. I'm building a rainbow. Can you help me?
A rainbow? What a grand idea! Unfortunately, I don't know how to build a rainbow, so I don't think I would be much help,
Mrs. Applegate said. Jake was sad and frowned a big frown. Mrs. Applegate felt bad.
Jake, don't be sad. I'm sorry I can't help. Here, take a crate of oranges. They're delightfully delicious,
she said, placing a large crate of oranges into the wagon. Jake said thank you, waved goodbye, and went to try to find someone else to help. He walked a little farther and came to the flower shop. He opened the door and went inside. It smelled wonderful. Mr. Petunia looked up to see Jake and smiled widely.
Hello, Jake. What can I help you with today?
Hello, Mr. Petunia. I'm building a rainbow. Can you help me? Mr. Petunia tapped his nose and thought for a moment.
No, Jake, I don't think I can. I have to water all the lilies, pick the daisies, and dethorn the rose bushes. I'm sorry.
Jake was sad and frowned a big frown. Mr. Petunia felt bad.
Jake, don't be sad. Why don't you take an armful of sunflowers instead? They're quite cheery,
he said, wrapping up a bundle of the bright yellow flowers and handing them to Jake. Jake took the bundle and put it in his wagon. He said thank you, waved goodbye, and went to try to find someone else to help. Next, Jake came to a large house, the home of Mrs. Benjamin's, the richest person in town. She was outside painting when Jake walked up. Mrs. Benjamin smiled.
Well, hello there, my dear Jake. I am quite well. Thank you for asking. How is a fine lad such as yourself keeping busy on such a glorious day?
I'm building a rainbow, Jake said excitedly. Can you help me?
Oh, my dear child, I haven't the slightest idea how to do such a thing,
she replied. Jake was sad and frowned a big frown. Mrs. Benjamin felt bad.
Jake, chin up. Surely someone else can help you more than I.
She paused for a moment before exclaiming,
Aha! I have an idea. Wait here a moment.
Mrs. Benjamin rushed into her house and came back a few seconds later, carrying a large bag.
Here, take this bag full of jewels. I know they're not as beautiful as a rainbow, but maybe they can help, she said.
Jake took it and looked inside. It was full of beautiful, sparkling green jewels. He wasn't exactly sure what to do with them, so he put the bag in his wagon, said thank you, waved goodbye, and went to try to find someone else to help. Jake was getting worried. He had almost walked around the whole town, and he still didn't have anybody to help him build his rainbow. There were 2 more stores to visit. Maybe one of them would actually help. Not long after leaving Mrs. Benjamin's house, Jake arrived at the music store. There were a bunch of people inside playing instruments, so it took a few minutes for Mrs. Highnote to notice Jake.
Hello, Jake. Are you here to practice the piano?
Mrs. Highnote said in her sing-songy voice. No, Mrs. Highnote, he said. I'm trying to build a rainbow. Can you help me?
Oh, not today, Jake. I'm sorry. I have to give Clarence his clarinet lessons, Gertie her guitar lessons, Penelope her piano lessons, and Xavier his xylophone lessons. I just don't have time,
Mrs. Highnote said. Jake was sad and frowned a big frown. Mrs. Highnote felt bad.
Jake, don't be sad. Here, why don't you take this box of blue instruments? They look funny, but they make beautiful music. Perhaps you could write a song instead of building a rainbow.
Jake took the large box full of blue guitars, blue saxophones, blue violins, and blue didgeridoos and put it in his wagon. He said thank you, waved goodbye, and went to try to find someone else to help. Jake's last stop was the toy store, his favorite store in town. Mr. Roboto was his last hope for help with his rainbow. He walked through the door and was greeted almost immediately by a smiling Mr. Roboto.
Good morning, Jake. How are you?
Mr. Roboto asked. I'm great, Mr. Roboto, Jake said. Can you help me with something?
Of course. What is it, Jake?
Mr. Roboto asked. I'm building a rainbow, and I've never done it before. I've gone all over town asking everyone I know to help, and no one can. Can you help me, please? Jake pleaded. Mr. Roboto frowned.
I am sorry, Jake. I can't help you either,
he answered.
Jake, don't be sad. I know this isn't the same, but why don't you take this package of purple dinosaur toys? Maybe they'll be fun to play with instead of building a rainbow.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto, Jake said, taking the package and putting it in his wagon. He waved goodbye and headed home. When he got home, Jake was very upset. He just wanted to build a rainbow and no one would help him. He kicked his wagon in frustration. The red candy flew everywhere. The oranges spilled onto the grass. The sunflowers came unbundled. The jewels scattered. The musical instruments noisily tumbled into the yard, and the purple dinosaurs fell to the ground. Jake looked at the mess he made. A wide smile crossed his face. His friends had helped him. He shouldn't have been angry with them. Each of them had given a small gift, and each gift, when added with the others, had helped him do exactly what he wanted to do. Build the most beautiful rainbow the neighborhood had ever seen.